Look, I mean, if you are a communications platform or a media company, you're always wrestling with the central question of, am I a business or am I an institution with First Amendment obligations? And having worked on situations like this, no matter what your answer is, you're going to upset somebody. And so the question is, it's a business decision, what is the consequences? I mean, as a publicly traded media company or social media company, they have a choice, not unlike how journalism company like CNBC, I have no legal right, First Amendment right, to be on your show. I have a legal right to talk at a restaurant, but you have to look at what the consequences are, and I'm not sure there is a great consequence to Twitter for doing this. I mean, is Donald Trump really going to stop tweeting? I think where you start to get into a consequences situation is, where does the slippery slope stop? If you're going to ban or suspend someone with a right-wing view, are you going to suspend someone with a left-wing view? And so those are the type of situations and questions that Twitter has to ask themselves. But I'm not certain that this is a real crisis.
Eric, who has done it better? It seems to me that you had a number of other services ban him. Twitter was the last to ban him and do so only on a temporary basis. Frankly, the one that had the biggest opportunity to take a stand on this issue and some of the things that he had said earlier was Facebook, which didn't do anything. And it really, I mean, I think to the extent you're in the camp that he should have been banned or taken off some of these services, it was Apple that was the first mover in all of this. But what's unclear to me is, from a business perspective, how this is changing their businesses one way or the other.
I don't think we know the answer to that yet, because I think it's way too soon. I mean, generally speaking, what I am seeing is a reluctance to take stands that can be viewed as political. I mean, I have seen time and again companies congratulating themselves for taking political views, especially those that are considered politically correct, thinking they are going to be applauded, and they find that they're not. I mean, you see this with retailers and gun sales, thinking that they are going to be rewarded by the consumer, and the opposite happens. I mean, to me, Twitter has a larger question, which has nothing to do with Alex Jones. It has to do with the extent to which are they viable as a business, and also, I mean, I think it's primarily, are they viable as a business? So, so I think that's what they have to focus on.
There's two business-related questions here. One is an advertising question, which is, if you're a CMO, are you going to say, you know what, I can't do business with these people. They're letting these conspiracy theorists say these things. We, meaning the CMO of whomever, are not going to advertise on this platform. Meanwhile, the other constituency in this, which we haven't discussed yet, is where you're based, Washington, D.C. right now, which is what regulators do about this. And in this particular case, I'm not talking about what Democrats do about it. I'm talking about what Republicans might do about it to their businesses in Silicon Valley.
Well, I know it's a very interesting point, because I do think that there is a lot of concern among conservatives that social media has a left-of-center bias, in large measure because of where they're based. I don't know whether you can bear that out, especially in the wake of the 2016 presidential election, where the argument's been made that there was a pro-Trump bias. But nevertheless, I do think you are seeing a sense in the Republican community that there is a bias, a cultural bias, against conservatives. So it's going to be very interesting to see if a left-of-center organization takes the position that we must protest in the streets. Is Twitter or a similar organization going to say this is inciting violence and we're not going to have that? So it's a very slippery slope. The better of your bad options tends to be not to suspend or ban people, simply because of the enemies you're going to make. But I frankly can't look you in the eye or in the camera and say the fact that Twitter is suspending Alex Jones is going to have a huge business implication, largely because where else are people going to go? It's sort of like every time there's an airline incident, people say, can United or Delta survive? Well, if you need to go from Baltimore to California, you're not taking a bus. So there's a lot of media hubbub, but the organization survived just fine.
Wow. There are some pretty well-known leaders of, you know, I'm trying to be so tactful now. Should I do that? But you just described some well-known Democrats that would already be deleted in terms of saying, you know, harass Trump followers, do this, do that. Violence is some of the best-known names have already said things like that, Eric.
Well, look, I've been in Washington for 35 years, and look, by way of disclosure, I worked in a Republican White House. I worked for Reagan when I was in my 20s, and what you see sometimes is when Democrats are aggressive, it's community organizing, but when Republicans do it, it's dirty tricks. And so the question then applies to social media and media organizations is what are you going to censor? I mean, I'm not a fan of the Alex Jones shtick, but I also think that there is plenty of left of center behavior that can be considered insightful and mean-spirited.
It's definitely going to be a double standard. I see it already. So.
Look, to me, I think businesses look at this as wanting to not take sides on this and wanting to lay below the radar, because there's not a lot of upside in alienating potentially 50% of your customer base, no matter what you do.
Well, that's right. But I think that one of the things I would point out is corporations tend to lean very strongly, despite the fact that people think that they're conservative, to politically correct notions. And I have spent decades in a room where people think if they take a politically correct position, they are going to be applauded by the marketplace. Right. And what they find is they walk into a spider web.